find a way.
Andy, you are the brand new president of King University. And those of us who King is such a special part of our story, and it's such an important part of Bristol. I'm so excited to hear your vision for the school and what you've seen with King. So there's so many things I want to talk about. But first, I really want to hear about you and your story and where this journey began.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So first, let me just say that I am really pleased to be here. So it's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I love that you were one of the first people that reached out to me when this announcement was made public. And I loved it because I was like looking for some place to play indoor tennis. And so the fact that you made me aware of that right away was perfect. And,
a little bird told me that you were a tennis player. And so I was interested in the whole King thing, but more interested in a new tennis friend.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Yeah. Well, we can do both. And I love it that we're able to do both. So yeah, thanks for this opportunity and thanks for playing tennis with me. Yeah. So that's a great question of where it begins. I think, all of us, when we have those times in our life, when we reflect back on different periods, we can start the story in different places. And I think for me, I would probably begin with actually reading your kind of briefing on the podcast. Brought up some memories for me. And I think it starts with opportunities of people who have kind of taken a chance on me and have given me opportunities. And so that started in my driveway playing basketball with my older brother and his friends and some of our neighbors who were, again, I thought were really cool, were older than me. And I was really into basketball and watching old movies, Pistol Pete, and, practicing my dribbling skills and doing all that. And then they let me come out on the basketball court in our driveway and play with them. And I had so much fun. And again, they were so much better than me at the time, but I learned a lot. I learned, to really fake a shot and step back, some just basic skills because they were taller than I was, and they would, stuff me or block the shot. But having moments of learning how to deal with frustrations at a young age and discouragement. And, not always realizing too at 10 years old when you're, that they are that much older or better than you. Because in my mind, I thought I was as good as they were. And why couldn't I perform in that way? But I did have one of my brother's friends that really kind of took me aside and had one of those first pep talks of just kind of, we can do this. We're down by 7, but, we're going to make this happen, and really giving me encouragement that I've just been fortunate to experience throughout my life of having, good coaches, good teachers, people who took the time to see me, to observe and look closely beyond even when I gave an answer that had maybe too much confidence or bravado, that they saw beyond that. And were willing to have that conversation with me, but to continue to give me opportunities to say, no, I think you could take this AP class, right? Or I think you could excel in this way. And, you have potential, but you know what? You're kind of lazy. You should work a little bit harder here. And just kind of having that throughout my life, along with disappointments and failures as well. And, in life that really does. I mean, some of my biggest heroes have been those people who have overcome adversity and have failed. Teddy Roosevelt, famously his wife and mother passed away within, I think it was 36 hours of one another, and having to overcome that. I mean, that's really before his political career started, and what that could do to a person, a family, and just wanting to kind of shrink back, right? And create your own sort of space and say, no, I'm not going to move on or press on. And I'm just going to kind of self-medicate over here in this corner and watch movies and eat 3 bags of chips or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And not continue to press on there.
And you don't start with that kind of adversity. You start with what you described, this mundane moment in your neighborhood that you remember decades later.
That's right. Totally.
Where does your story begin? I was playing basketball against older kids, and this guy gave me a pep talk.
Yep.
Right? Like, how crazy, those little moments, how they can really affect the trajectory of your life.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
give you confidence. Like, you get that confidence when you're in the neighborhood, so that then you have the confidence when bigger adversity comes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And really learning, there's been lots of books on this, and Jonathan Haidt, most famously in the last probably decade, has really drawn our attention to this, but is learning how to fail, and that failure is part of success, and learning how to fail early and learning your lessons from that. And so that's just something I really, I was trained as a historian, and I've always been an observer of kind of people and communities in the past, and have really been eager to learn lessons, and sometimes too eager, right? You need to let it play out first, that you can't learn the lesson yet, right? I've almost, wanted to jump to that space. Okay, what can we learn from this? But it's absolutely something that I deeply believe the Lord is, speaking to us in lots of different ways, from Scripture, from people, the communities we're in. And so just being attentive to that, listening to that. And yeah, that was a big part of my upbringing as well, is really coming to faith senior year in college. That was obviously huge, transformative for me, that conversion experience, even though being raised in a Christian household and going to both Protestant and Catholic schools, but just kind of really missing the mark on a lot of that.
You mentioned on that opportunity in the neighborhood that the other kids gave you an opportunity to play at a higher level.
Yes.
And I think that's an important part of the journey to success, is being exposed to a higher level.
Yes.
Having people around, ideally, having people around you that can give you that pep talk, the willingness to fail. Like, there's just a lot to that. And I think I see a lot of parents now protecting their kids from failure. And like, we learned it in the neighborhood, and I guess relevant to this, your new career, like your new role now. When I started at King, I was your typical 18-year-old guy who wasn't all that interested in academics. I was way more interested in playing soccer, all those things. And I had a freshman professor named Kara Anderson. It used to be Kara Everett. And that was my transformative time in life. She taught English comp, and she was tough. And I had never, I wasn't serious about academics. It just wasn't part of it wasn't part of my identity. And she refused to lower the bar for me. She saw something in me. I don't know why. But she saw something in me that I could succeed at a higher level of English comp. She refused to lower the bar. And that was one of the most influential moments of my life, because I learned so much from that experience. She just would not accept less than what she thought I could do.
That's right. And the possibilities, you then through that experienced actually what was possible. Right. And the joy and the satisfaction that came from achieving that, right? That actually, when she said, well done, and you received a grade that reflected that, was a huge encouragement, and I'm
Yeah.
sure a boost to you to be like, why am I not doing this in every class?
It was a satisfaction and I think self-confidence that I had experienced in various sports.
Mm-hmm.
I had you score a touchdown, you score a goal, you have that. I had
Right.
never had that in that part of my life,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I'd had many people expect that from me.
In that space. Yep.
And like you remember this interaction on the neighborhood.
Yes.
I remember like this interaction was so transformative for me, and I drew on it honestly until today.
Mm.
And it's about self-belief, but it was someone challenging me. I guess going to college,
Yeah.
you're exposed to a higher level,
Mm-hmm.
and then to have that person around you that can help you achieve it.
Yeah.
It's magical.
It is. And it's not a individual or solitary endeavor, right? That actually education really is about the professors want to help you. They want you to succeed. They want you to do well. And then when you actually experience that and feel that and see it actually in these concrete ways, how they're spending time with you in office hours or helping you and, helping you craft that paper and showing you, suddenly it's also what was mysterious is no longer as mysterious, right? Like, I mean, going back to, even with sports, it's like, how do I score that goal? How do I accomplish that thing that I cannot do right now? And then being shown how to do that, kind of the ABCs. And you realize, it's no longer a mystery about how to succeed in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. And for a first generation college student like myself, it's probably even more significant. And a lot of King students are there. Like, this is East Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just that she showed me like the words that she used, but she showed me the way she held herself. Right. Like,
yes.
And being around successful people or people that are playing at a higher level than you. I think that's as powerful as what they tell you.
Yes.
You learn to see how they carry themselves, how they overcome adversity. And that's an important part of that college experience, is being exposed to that.
It is, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think sports is the same way. Like, I think back in times of life where you're exposed to a different level and how influential the people that you're around can be. And when they're supportive and when they genuinely care about you, it's even more significant, right?
That's right. And I think it's so important to have those ideals. And I think it's important that we set those aspirations and those goals and ideals for ourselves, but it really does need to come out of a community because we don't always know. We might set the bar lower. And so having those people around you, like you said, your teacher did, to have those high expectations and then not lowering them for you because of, for whatever reason you thought was legitimate. Your teacher was saying, no, it's not.
Right.
You can still do it. And I think it's also important to have people helping us set those goals and those ideals, but then also having people who can spur us on.
So I find that the college experience is a little bit under attack from culture, and it's viewed with almost like suspicion now. And does it really add any value? And I think people look at it as economic value. But I look back on my own experience and I think about how transformative that was, being surrounded by this community that cared about me and raised the expectation. It's the intangibles that you can't. It's hard to name, right? It's hard to quantify. But for me personally, it was so important. And then as coaching in that environment, I remember the most rewarding part of coaching and teaching at college was watching seniors walk across the stage being such different people than they were when they came to freshman orientation. And that always gave me like meaning in my work there.
Yes.
To be a part of that transformation.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think so. You put it, I think, generously and mildly when you said that there's been some resistance to the value of higher education because it's kind of been roped in and politicized in a lot of ways. But in education is supposed to be not only preparing people to live meaningful lives, have gainful employment, but to be useful citizens. And it's not just about transmission of knowledge, right? We want to transform students' lives. It's a pivotal point in their lives. And I think that, I spoke about this in some other contexts as well, about there's been, I think, a failure to really prepare students to live those kind of meaningful lives, especially as a Christian liberal arts institution. We believe very deeply in that. And so we believe in spiritual development, character development, preparing people to investigate the world around them. We need a variety of disciplines to do that. You're incomplete if you're just looking at things from an economic model or, from another model, perhaps that's self-serving. And we need then a community of people who are thinking differently or from different experiences and are asking different questions and are different places in their lives. Again, when you come as a freshman or even during your time, people who are incredibly mature and they're the same age as us. And they've had different experiences, wrestled with different things in their lives. And just some of the questions they begin to ask in a class or in your dorm room at night or wherever prompts and provokes us to just think differently about that.
Yeah. What do you, knowing that, what responsibility do you feel when you come to a new school like King? Like, what are the non-negotiables that you want to make sure a school does provide? Because I think people think about it as probably as we get older, we forget the intangibles and we think, oh, it's transfer of knowledge. It's transactional. Like, what major are they going to prepare you for? It's never been that. That's never been the thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. That's a great question. And so I think experience matters. And maybe I'll just say something a minute about what you said earlier, which is that I think we've gotten off track with some of our experiences so that we try to create, rather than an educational playground, we've created just a playground. And so universities and really just, I'll say higher education in general, in some ways has just become like a playground, and we make it like a mall where we want students to come and just have fun. Right. And that is part of, I think, experiences that they need to have, but it needs to be, helping them to think more deeply about the world. And so they need to have an experience where they do, there's those moments of pause. And the experiences are really educational ones that are driving them towards thinking deeply about the world. Not only what are the skills that they currently have now, what are they trying to develop, and what is it that they feel they're being called to as a vocation, as a profession. And so it's 4 years of not only, acquiring lots of new knowledge, but it's just learning a process of discernment as well about asking some of those questions of what have I been given? What have I been called to do? Exposure to new ways of, what does the community need? What does Bristol need or wherever they are, and how they can contribute to that.
I really like that visual of a just being a playground. Because I think back to, and my kids just had 2 graduate from college and 1 doing the college search now. So I've been on a lot.
That's great.
Been on a lot of college visits the
Yes.
past few years. And you're right. Like, they are marketed on those college visits as a playground.
Yeah.
Like, they're showing off their dorms and their sand volleyball courts and all the ways to
A lot of leisure activity.
And I wonder if maybe that's some of the valid criticism that's being leveled at colleges now. And we also seen the price go up.
That's right.
Astronomically.
That's
and
right.
Those two things are related.
That's right.
Like, it is possible to go on a typical college now and confuse it with a resort.
Yes, that's right.
Not at King.
Not at King. That's right. But you're right. It is, and it's again. We want to be careful here too, because there is you have to be market sensitive, right? I mean, you can't provide students with just a horrible experience. They do want to come, and they are paying, but we need to make sure that what is it that we're leading them towards, right?
Yeah.
What do we want to provide them with?
Yeah.
And it is knowledge, but it is also opportunities where they can learn to try again, with Winnie the Pooh, and to develop that mindset of in a community that can help encourage, right? That you're not alone, and you can, going back to your story, achieve this with hard work. And here's some ways that you can do that, and you can have success in this space. But it does need to be, college really is, I remember so my mom was an educator. She was a French teacher. And I remember having a sick day, and she used to tutor students at the University of Nebraska. And so there were some times where I was sick, and I would go with her while she would tutor some of these students. And I remember being amazed when we would drive through the campus of all the students that were like hanging around playing. And I was like, I want to go to college because I want to play. Right. And my mom saying, that's not what college is about.
Yeah.
That's not, and I think sometimes that we've made it much more about leisure than about what is it that we're trying to achieve, and what are we asking of one another?
Yeah.
Here.
And the rub is your customer is the person you're marketing to is a 17-year-old.
That's right. That's right. But I think that, how many of us have had experiences where you're put in situations like college. I can call it kind of forced situations. When you're in the dorms, you meet lots of different people, and everyone has experienced someone that they didn't particularly like in their dorm. But you get into these late night conversations or times, or you're going on a walk or doing something, and it becomes really meaningful.
Yeah.
And you're exposed to, just you had not reflected on or thought about something in that way, and it becomes really meaningful. And so how do we so I'll give you a quick example here. Is like we were hiking, knew the area. Our family loves to hike, and we went up to Grayson State Park, and we ended up getting a little lost, and then like 4 hours worth of lost, and then it started pouring rain, and you could start turning on one another and grumbling and complaining. But then we just started laughing and just like, what situation are we in? It's pouring rain, and we did not, bring all the supplies we needed to do this. But when we came out of it, it was a really meaningful moment. There was things we ended up talking about with our children and liking it to, Lord of the Rings, and we're on this journey and just going through all this stuff, and that what it then produces in us. And so I want, if everything is so geared towards the customer, there's never a time for what I call kind of a holy disruption,
Hmm.
or maybe kind of holy chaos isn't
Hmm.
really the right word, but I'll say holy
Hmm.
disruption, where you can have a meaningful experience that you didn't plan
Mm-hmm.
on. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you were planning on just watching a YouTube video or a movie or whatever, but suddenly you're now in a situation and it's maybe slightly uncomfortable, slightly amusing, awkward, but it ends up being really meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
And I want our students to have lots of those experiences. And so how do you build that in? We try to build it into the curriculum, but also it needs to be in lots of different ways that we allow for students to have those experiences with one another and then with faculty and staff as well. And I think if you could go sort of on a consumer shopping spree or have one of these meaningful experiences, I think a lot of people end up choosing, not to say that shopping can't be meaningful. It can, but I think some of those other kinds of experiences can really be educational that we haven't, they're unplanned, right? We haven't tried to plan for that. It just happened. And I think college creates an environment for that for us.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. And in those moments, the people that you're with matter.
Yes.
Quality people who care about you.
Yes.
Turn those moments into something that you remember decades.
That's right.
Decades later.
That's right.
And it seems like our relationships now tend to be so shallow and so transactional. It's almost like we may have to manufacture. We have to manufacture those deeper moments that you're describing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're onto something there, because so much of our lives are curated, and then outside of that curation, whether it's a job or classes, we're just thinking a lot about leisure. We just think a lot about, what do I feel like doing right now? And we're not then putting ourselves in situations where we're having any kind of spontaneous.
It's like a curated playground.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. With that, I know that I tell myself at times, oh, I'm too tired, or my schedule won't allow for that, or I just can't right now. And actually, when I think about it, I'm just telling myself that actually there was a time in my life where I was prioritizing, everyone. When you start having children, you start thinking about, okay, how am I going to balance career and home life? And, until I got to a point where I actually saw them an extension of one another. It was truly, I had a holistic vision of vocation. But for me, I at the time was kind of bifurcating them, and it was like, okay, I'm now going to do this, and I come home and I'm too tired. I don't have time for this or whatever. And it was actually like, no, my children need me. I need them. My spouse needs me. I need her. And stop telling myself that I'm too tired or I don't have time for that. That actually is not the case. It was a narrative that became self-fulfilling in some ways that I had in my mind. And I think, again, not to just sit here and harp on leisure activities, but I do think sometimes that pursuit of pleasure, that we can talk ourselves into, like, oh, I'm too tired, or and not going out and continuing to be, in social spaces where we're encountering other people.
So where are the places that you see a college campus creating that environment? Is it in academic rigor and holding that standard high? Is it other places? Where do you bring that to bear in a real way on a college campus in 2024?
Yeah, good question. So I think you're right. It does. So in multiple places. So with the curriculum, with the courses they're taking, with the academic excellence, right, that we expect of our students and that we help them in. I think it happens all over the sports, in athletics, and on the field, off the field. I know our coaches are really, really thinking about that character development with the student athletes. They not only want them to perform well and to live up to their potential, but they want them to be good human beings and good teammates, right? And so you see it happening there. I also think then, there's lots of spaces with internships. What we ask of students is they're involved with internships in various ways. At churches, right? I think it's important that students are exposed to, you can kind of have a curated cul-de-sac, if you will, environment where you don't really interact with many people beyond those of your own age. And so
never leave the playground.
That's right. That's right. And so I think church is a great space too, to have a multi-generational experiences, encounters with folks, and again, lessons learned there, to have meals with people, live life with them. And so I think being fully involved, I think there's volunteer opportunities. Again, we have a lot of student athletes, and so there's not always that extra time in some of their schedules. But I do think it shows up in those spaces, and I certainly want to build it in more. I want us to have, we're a residential institution. We have online programs, we have graduate programs, but I think that there is something that is unique and important and significant about residential education, where you are living with people as you are pursuing your education. And so I do want them to have more experiences in that space. I really think it's important for, as an administrator and our administration, to be engaging with students. And so I am 40 days here, but I really, we have cabinet meetings every week on Tuesdays, and I'd love to find a way as my cabinet, as we are working together and developing a working rapport, I'd love to have some of our meetings out in the Oval on campus in the Adirondack chairs and just be able to sit around. We need to get work done, but just being visible and approachable. So both creating intentional spaces, but just being available in some ways, And so I think if students do see us around, they're, there's more of an opportunity for them to come and talk, and for us to engage them as well.
I know you've got ambitious plans for King, and we've talked outside of this that you don't average can't be good enough.
Correct.
We have to move. You have to move beyond that. Tell me, when you look into, and there's a lot of work between here and there, but when you look into the future and you look 3-5 years down the road, what do you want to be distinctive about King? Like, kids go on so many different campus tours, and you're right. Like, those campus tours are probably 90% pitching the playgrounds. Yeah. What do you want people to say about King?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
It really is. And of thinking through those, because we need to be mission centric. I can't recall if I've said to you, but certainly others where I've talked about, there's mission drift and there's mission sprawl, right? I would say, like, where we have, malls on campuses is mission sprawl. You can still accomplish your mission, but again, it's become more of a playground, or equally a playground as an educational institution. So we need to be mission centric for sure. And that needs to be driving what we're doing. We need to really be strategic in how we're doing that. Maybe let me pause a minute and just say that I've been so pleased with coming to King and the good people that are here. I just am so, I've spent most of my life in larger cities, and I've only been in Tennessee for 2.5 years. Yeah. And so I'm still kind of learning Tennessee, but there are just just really good quality people here in Bristol that I've met, and just can't speak highly enough about them and the people that I've met at King, and that I'm working alongside as we're co-laborers together.
Yeah.
Is just a real joy.
Yeah.
It has to start there with just people who have a love for what they're doing and want to work hard. And so you can't really teach that. And so that work ethic. And so now for me, it's about, okay, how do we work? Where is it that we're going to allocate our time and our resources to move the needle in the spaces that we need to move them, to strengthen our areas that we need to, and stay true to who King is, but also to kind of refashion those values in the 21st century, right? Education is very different than it was post World War II, than it was in the 80s and 90s. And so I think, and again, the Great Recession of 2008, and then again, pandemic. So higher ed has really been pushed and stretched in these last 12 years, 15 years. And so for me, I look at King and I just see so much goodness. To get back to your original question, I see so much goodness and I see so much opportunity and potential there. So I think it's going to take organizational change and culture change in very positive ways. So building on what we have. And so the King of the future is really going to first and foremost be a place that is a Christian liberal arts institution. We're a Christian institution. We've had that, Presbyterian history, and we are going to stay true to that. And I do think it's a distinctive because, when I gave my convocation speech, it was titled The Christian Liberal Arts and Education for a Lifetime. I think there are places around the country that call themselves Christian and liberal arts, but they don't really understand what that means to be a Christian institution, to actually institutionalize those Christian values and principles. And so it starts with, I could go on here and really monologue, but Philippians 2 is just a big verse for me about, when Christ, his humility and coming and power, giving up power, setting aside power, and power sharing. And I think that's truly what's needed to be co-laborers. And I think that it takes humility, and I think it takes courage and boldness in the right places. So again, risk coming in. How are we going to do that? So I think for me, there's a lot of listening and learning. So I come in and look, the president of 15, 20 years ago, kind of pre-Great Recession, was able to come in and take the first 1 to 3 years and just listen. They weren't expected to have a vision. They weren't really expected to be too aggressive in their vision for the university and what they're going to do. Well, universities kind of post Great Recession, post pandemic, are in a tight spot. They just financially and across the country. And so the president in the 21st century, now post pandemic, they don't have that luxury to think 3 years. So that listening and learning has to be accelerated. So it's really more like 6 months to a year. And
you don't have the luxury. You don't have the luxury of figuring it out.
You don't. And
or luxury of time to figure it out.
That's right. And so it's the runway is shorter. And so I love it. So when, as a lifelong learner and educator, I really look to some of the folks who are doing work in the space. So John Cotter is someone, I don't know, I think it was 20 years ago, maybe longer, that he first wrote a piece in the Harvard Business Review talking about how to lead change, and then has written since then, I think within the last 5 years, about how to accelerate that change. And so that's very much where I am trying to, how do I have all the right ingredients, which is listening well, which is honoring the mission and who we are and carrying that forward, but doing it in a very timely, accelerated way. And so this is just to say that I don't have an answer yet to
Yeah.
what all of our distinctives are.
Yeah.
And exactly, I have ideas about where I think we need to be in 5 years, but I don't have that all mapped out right now.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult, right? Because you've been on campus 40 days,
Yeah.
and this school has been around for 150
plus.
some
Yep.
years. And I'm sure, like, when you talk about a Christian college, that comes with a lot of baggage. Like,
Yes.
people project their idea of a Christian college on
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yep.
And so it's got to be difficult to try not to impose your own
That's right.
vision
I love
and
that.
have
That's right.
time at the same time to listen to what this place is about.
That's right.
And you don't have the luxury of
Yeah.
years to do that.
Yeah.
You have to do that. You have to compress that in
Yeah.
months.
Well, that's right. And that's absolutely why it's great to have that longevity at the institution of people who've been around, alums like yourself, who have been very generous with your time, and your energy, and, you know, and fielding questions and just talking me through your perceptions. And again, we have a great board of trustees who is very invested, and King is fortunate too, where we have a high concentration of alums who have stayed in the area after they've graduated. So there are a lot of folks around that I've called on and will call on to get their insight into you know, where they think King needs to go as well. But certainly there's things where we need to be financially responsible. We need to be on, you know, solid financial footing.
Right.
And but first and foremost, it does, for me, it's about that Christian liberal arts identity, and it's about making sure that we are transforming students' lives, and we are then helping them to become gainfully and meaningfully employed, that as they understand their relationship to God and neighbor, that they are developing a vocation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we want to be helping them develop that as well.
That transforming lives is a phrase that's bandied about a lot by organizations.
Yeah.
And it can take on a very shallow,
Yep.
meaningless kind of catchphrase.
Yeah.
If you've had a lot of experience on college campuses,
Yeah.
what is more important for transforming lives? Is it the what they study? Is it the who that's teaching them? Is it the intangibles of the campus?
Yeah.
What have you seen that is most important to that?
Well, you know, you're not going to be surprised that my answer is it's all, or it's both and. But I do think that great educators make a difference. I mean, you know, I am a humanities person, and was never, you know, the hard sciences, natural sciences were never something that I was particularly interested in. I wasn't like in you know, in my leisure time reading books on chemistry or biology, but I had some professors in that space who made,
for sure,
the you know, knowledge come alive.
Yeah.
And it was really about, you know, how they were presenting the information, and they were then helping me show what difference it made in my life.
Relating it to.
Yes, relating it. And also then what I saw when I came to a Christian liberal arts institution as a faculty member, I saw the ways in which faculty colleagues were integrating that into, and so showing that God's good creation, that as learners, as Christians, we above all should be the ones that are taking the most interest in everything, right? Because God created it all, and He created it for out of His good pleasure, and He created it for us, and we're stewards of that. And so we need to be the ones who are really investigating that. And I saw the ways in which good professors did that in the classroom.
Hmm.
And then also outside of the classroom and in office hours and spending time with them and caring about the students. And so giving them also lifelong lessons about relationships
Yeah.
with opposite sex, or
Yeah.
just how to overcome adversity, like we talked about. And so I think that's a big part. Is I think that I'll say this here, and then I'll
Yeah.
let you respond, which is that a lot of big universities, R1, Research One universities, they have a place. They are doing really good work
Mm-hmm.
and advancing knowledge in significant ways. And so I in no way want to
Mm-hmm.
speak against that work being done there. But researchers are not always the best teachers.
Mm.
And I think that at liberal arts institutions and Christian liberal arts institutions like King, we really have that opportunity to hone our teaching, our pedagogy. And so really helping, I think sometimes that professors at liberal arts colleges look at some of their colleagues, maybe that they went to graduate school with, and they're teaching at, University of Virginia or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, they've now published their third book.
Mm.
And I've only published like 2 or 3 peer-reviewed journal articles. And they somehow feel less than.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, do you know the opportunity you have in the classroom to change students' lives, and that you can really develop your teaching in a way where you are making a difference in a way? Not to say that those research professors aren't, but they're not always spending the time in honing their pedagogy to help students in that way. So I do think that there's subject matter for sure that matters, but I do think the professors just can really matter a whole lot, and staff, I'll say, because they're great. When you walk into an office and you're meted by that, office coordinator, and they're like, how can I help you? And just engaging and spending time, that matters a lot.
I'm glad you mentioned, because there's so many ways that small schools are at a disadvantage.
Yes.
Like you take a King and you compare it to a University of Virginia, and you can't compare the playgrounds.
Right.
You go down the list of
Right.
resource advantages.
Oh yeah.
That the bigger schools have. But I don't think we talk enough about the advantages that the small communities have. And you just did, right?
Yes.
Like the things that matter are the relationships,
Mm-hmm.
the one-to-one mentoring, the caring about me as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Small schools have an advantage there.
They do, absolutely. And I've been going around, there's a number of good practices that every president should do when they come into a new institution. And one of those is get to know the faculty and staff. And so I have been intentional about going around and meeting faculty and staff. But one of the questions that I've been asking a lot of the faculty is, what are you most proud of here at King? And what gives you sort of energy and keeps you here in this community? And the vast majority of them have answered the interaction with the students and the fact that they can make a difference in their lives. And a number of them have been alums too, or have been at other institutions where they said, because I experienced that as well when I was a student.
Yeah.
And it's so important is that they want that engagement. And I've found also, and I know our faculty do it at King, is I found when I was teaching over the years that I had to actually build into the syllabi office hours. Like there was a time when I first started teaching where students just came to your office hours. They had assignments and they would just come. And then suddenly like they stopped coming as much. And I was like, what's going on here? And then I just started building it in to the syllabi to say, you were required to come to an office hour, 3 times a semester. And it was actually part of the grade, whatever it was, 2% or 5%. And so there's also lots of things going on there. But I think then we need to both, to use kind of business language, we need to incentivize them, right? Or in this case, a grade. But just that as professors wanting to do that and helping students, but helping then students to see the value in that. It's not just self-evident
Yeah.
anymore.
But it's an advantage of a small school.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
if you were at a large university,
Yeah.
it would be like arm twisting to get some of those professors to have office hours.
Yes,
That's not their primary
that's right.
career, right?
That's
They're
right.
there for research and really important things.
Yes,
They're not there primarily to mentor 17-year-olds.
that's right.
Right?
That's right.
But if you got the answer, like you asked King faculty and they told you it's to be with this, it's
Yes.
it's almost like a different job.
Yeah.
Teaching at a small school
Yeah.
versus a large school. And I think it's an advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
You don't have to convince your faculty to
That's
take
right.
these relationships seriously.
They want it not only
Yeah.
because of that's the kind of professor they want to be, but also because they're Christians and they want to invest in people,
Yeah.
and they want to help.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the frustrations that I hear from educators in general, because I think educators in general, apart from institutional research institutions, have that desire to teach, right?
Yes.
That's why they teach, is so that they can teach, not so that they can write books.
That's right.
And the frustration that I hear from them, and this is a lot in the public school system, is that the administrative burden has crowded out their ability to do what really matters. And I think that started a long time in public education with quantitative measurements of education, right? And then you've got the testing, and then all of the and the administrative time, and it just crowds out what they're there to do. And as I was leaving King, and that was 2010, I started to see that creep come onto the college campus. Is it something that you have control over in the culture, or is it just is it unavoidable?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I know less about public education in the sense of K through 12 or, at a state university. But I do think, so metrics are important. I know that, teachers certainly need to, in K through 12, they have to meet test standards and test scores. And so, education is, that's good. We want assessment. But I think in some ways it can become where the tail is wagging the dog, right? That we want to measure what we're doing and making sure that we're achieving the outcomes that we want, but we don't want to create roadblocks, right? And we actually don't want to move away from helping young people understand the intrinsic value of education, right? So just that there is a value in and of itself to knowing about the world we live in. And curiosity, yes, and that wonder. And then it's not just about we're learning this so that we know, when Abraham Lincoln, was assassinated. But it's like, well, why is that important? And understanding the context behind of like, why was he assassinated? And why, all of that, all the questions you ask around that is so important. So I think that, we need to get that right, that we have the right measurements in place, but that they are not becoming roadblocks to really what we're trying to do here, which is to create lifelong learners. We want to create that curiosity and to give them the tools, just like to go back to when you're saying that you learn tools of how to do well in your English composition class. And so what are some of those tools we can take with us throughout life?
But so many of them can't be measured.
Yes.
The important things that we've talked about, I don't know that we've mentioned a single thing that was important to us, that we think is important, that can fully be measured quantitatively. So being present, I'm wondering if maybe there's opportunity to do that on a small campus that maybe they don't have the luxury of doing in a large
Yeah, it's interesting that
university.
you say that, because I think that there's ways that we do that in, so I'm not sure. I think King does this, but other institutions I've been a part of have done, alumni surveys.
Hmm.
And there are a series of questions related to what did they value about their education when they think back on it, what was most meaningful. And I think that is an attempt in a very indirect way to kind of measure some of those qualitative experiences. But I think maybe even, we could be asking seniors, right? We could have, companies do exit interviews. I think there could be something there where we ask them some of those qualitative. I'm not an expert in surveys, but there people are who could create a survey that could ask some of those kinds of questions to get at that, so that we can be more intentional. I mean, every business owner knows that you have good employees, and sometimes when they leave, if you haven't written down exactly what they brought to the table to try to hire for replace them, suddenly you're like, I didn't realize that person was stopping at Food City and picking up Keurig K-cups, for everybody to have coffee. I mean, it was like suddenly it's gone. I mean, and so, I think that's also where we need to do a better job of seeing one another and observing. And David Brooks, New York Times columnist, wrote a book recently. I might be butchering the title, but it's something like How to Know a Person, right? But it's like, really how to know people, how to be curious about other people, observe them. And a lot of people are lonely walking through life of like, how do we let them know that they matter? Their contribution matters. We value them. They are children of God. They're created in God's image. And so how do we do that and notice them and observe? And so, yes, I think we need to do a better job of that. But you're right I don't know that we can measure it, but I think we should try. Yeah. Do you think we should try?
Yeah, I don't know that we would be surprised by the results.
Okay.
I suspect that they're going to say the same thing you and I said was meaningful.
Yeah.
And it was the relationships. It was individuals who raised the bar for me, challenged me, gave me an opportunity to do something a little bit better than I thought I could. And then they helped me get there. Like, I bet that's going to be at the top of alumni's list. But
of that.
But like, if those are the important things, those aren't the things we're measuring. Right. Like, and how do you, and I think it gets to the heart of what's so difficult about King is there's something special. There's something special there. Everybody that has been there knows it. It's hard to identify it. It's like this intangible thing. And it has to do with the really good people that are attracted to work at King. And it's consistently really good people. And it's the intangible environment. It's these little things, but it's so hard to name.
It is. It'd
be so much easier if it was we're a top 20 football team.
Right? That's right. Yeah.
The game day experience is great.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I think it's also right of, it's not a lot of those things. You experience it internally, but how do you also communicate it outwardly, externally, and to market it, not to cheapen it, but to actually let other people know. And there's a person that I see every day, and she is just a ray of sunshine every day. And in fact, there was a car alarm going off that kept going off. And I was in a Zoom meeting, right? And so it was actually distracting. It was loud and it kept going off. And I was like, someone needs to take care of that. Well, this person ran out there. And I actually was like, she is the best person to take care of that because she has such a winsome personality. And I know that she's not going to, whoever owns that car, she's not going to make them feel bad, right? She's going to be like, how can I help?
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
how can I help
right.
you? And yeah, how do you communicate that
Yeah.
outside? I mean, it's just those little things like that.
Little
Yes.
interactions
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And, but it is so hard to market it when it's so difficult to name. Like you have to name it before you can market it. And I think that's the challenge, or one of the challenges.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of challenges, and like you said, you have
Yes.
to do a lot of things at the same time because
Yes.
you don't have the luxury of doing
That's right.
one thing
That's
at a
right.
time, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me about like your approach to leadership. You can't do this single-handedly.
That's right.
This has to be a village.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. So I think that's a great question. Thanks. And I know you've got lots of thoughts on on this question that you've posed to me. For me, there are certain things that I think a president, and I'll just say me, I'll speak to my situation, that I need to manage. But ultimately, leadership is not management. And so it cannot be me managing lots of things. It really needs to be, as a community, we're setting goals and objectives. But there needs to be some of that vision casting, and it can't be everything is coming into my office and I have to sort of put a stamp on or give my 2 cents about before it gets done or sending it back out. And so I think there needs to be less management there. And so how I go about it really is, well, first of all, it's coming just to make sure we have everybody in the right roles, you know? And so everybody knows when you're a family, sometimes you're asked to do things that maybe you don't want to do, but because you're a family, you'll step in and help out and do it. But also maybe it's not an area of expertise for you. And so it's first finding out if everybody is thriving in their spaces, like, their job duties. I've asked a lot of people, are you enjoying this? Right? Do you feel like you're doing, like you're thriving in your role? Right? And so where is it? And so we came in and had an executive team coach. We did a cabinet retreat and just sorted through a number of things and to kind of get answers to some of these questions that I was asking. But it needs to then be empowering those people, right? So making sure that they're in the right spaces and that they want to be in those spaces, they're good in those spaces, and then empowering them and helping them do their job well, right? So I think maybe one of the first things I said to faculty as well is like, my role is to help you do what you want to do, right? Is to like invest in the classroom. And I don't want to put up roadblocks there. So I really see it as my role as serving.
Yeah.
And I know that can have a superficial definition and understanding and can be overused, but it's allowing people to do what they've been gifted to do and want to do. And so freeing them up to do that. And then allowing me to do that as well. So, if I'm just in a space where I'm managing, that's not going to go well, because my gifts are not primarily in management. It's really about trying to vision cast and inspire and creating an organization that can achieve what we want it to achieve, right? So figuring out what we need to do both as an organization, whether it's putting in those measurements, those assessments, but also helping create culture change as well. So kind of seeing the bigger picture there to move us forward. And if I'm caught up in a lot of these, granular things, we're not going to move forward in a way that we need to.
Yeah. I've seen people start with that approach and then it doesn't happen fast enough. And
you mean the vision cast?
Empowering others.
Yeah. Wow.
But then it's got to be tempting if they don't share your sense of urgency.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Well, absolutely. That's right. So one of the things,
and college campuses are not known for their sense of urgency and
Yeah.
change, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, exactly. That's right. So that's part of the culture change is people understanding not only that there's an urgency, but also then, going back to your example of, but we can do it, right? So it's providing, it's also like, we can achieve this, right? And here's the people that are going to help us achieve that, right? Whether it's a board of trustee member, whether it's, you, Matt Lavender, but it is a community of people that want to help. And it can't just be, here, you need to go build that car and deliver it to me in 6 months. And you're like, I don't know how to build a car, right? It's like, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's we're going to agree on what we need to achieve, and we're going to do it together. And I told, when I was interviewing for this position, the board did such a great job and the search committee did such a great job. I really enjoyed the process of interviewing for this position. And one of the things I told him was that, where I go when I'm stressed is micromanaging. So I think when you talk about, there's a number of things of we have to know ourselves. We have to also know that, where our weaknesses are. And I think it's important to be in a community where we're held accountable. So people know. I wanted them to know, like, look, when I get stressed, I start to micromanage. And that's a key indicator for somebody to say something to me and to step in. But also I am aware of it as well myself. And so that's going to be an impediment to us achieving that vision. Right. As well. And so it's really, that's why I'm such a strategist. I mean, we've got to have that vision, but we've got to have that strategy, and we really have to have, what are those 17 steps that we need to take to get to where we need to be, and being flexible to say, okay, these first 3 steps were good, but these next 2 are not the right steps. And so pulling those out and putting in the next 2 good steps to get there, to continue on. It's that continuous reevaluation.
One of the things I was most encouraged when I heard that you got this position is that you come from a school, Belmont in Nashville, that has gone from being a very small school to thriving. I think anybody that looked at models of small schools that had made that transition to thriving, Belmont's on a very short list.
That's right.
So you've seen what that looks like. And it was really my hope that we could get somebody that had actually lived that.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And it's not just a theory, but you've actually seen thriving happen. You've been a part of it.
And seen real change and seen the difficulty of change, right? When there is an inspiring vision, and then when there's innovation happening, good entrepreneurial work, and then there's so much change, right? And so how do you do that? How do you both, because you don't want to bottle that energy, right? But you do need to create some sort of skeleton or yardstick of how you're going to achieve it. So it really is this dance between, you have to have that big, bold vision. And then you have to have sort of the boring process to achieve it. And so that's why it takes a team, because oftentimes the visionaries are not the ones who have a good understanding of the process and the procedures that need to be in place to make that happen. And so, seeing that at Belmont, where it really was taking a team effort of so many people coming together and having this big, bold vision, and then trying to bring in the creating the skeleton and then putting the flesh on the bones to try to realize that vision, was front and center with that. And all the growth that's happening there.
Coming from a school like Belmont and the high position you had, I'm sure you had lots of different opportunities. It means something that you chose King. Like, you see a path to thriving here. You didn't choose a school whose ceiling was average.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I love how you just phrase it that way, because I look at King and I really see, I mean, the sky's the limit. I really do. And part of that begins with, again, through the interview process, such a great board. I mean, such great people. And again, I have continued to meet people that are just solid people. I had lunch with an alum today who is just an incredible person, and they want to be involved. And it's just, for me, how do we get you involved? Like, that's a great question. When you have great people around you, and it's like, okay, well, how do we harness this? And how do we bring them in?
Yeah.
So yes, I see that with King. And I see also that there is so much potential, so much opportunity. And I think sometimes that I mean, this has happened in my own life where I'm not always aware of my own possibilities for whatever reason. And someone else comes and sees something in me, and I'm like, yeah, why didn't I see that? I think King is a little bit like that. I mean, I look at it and I see there's so many things that are special about it.
Yeah.
And I refer to it as a gem. And there was someone that I was talking to that almost teared up, and they're like, we haven't heard that phrase used for King in a while. And I just see that.
Yeah.
I absolutely see that. There's so many things, and it's also in Bristol.
Yeah.
Right. I just see so much of that. I mean, and again, I've said this to you now multiple times about what happened with the Bristol Open and everything you did with pickleball. And it's like, that's a classic example of, like, you know, I just see that is going to continue to become the norm. Is what I see. And that's my hope for Bristol and King as well, is that we're going to have this. And it's going to be, we're going to kind of be blown away that, oh my gosh, this happened. This was amazing. Look how wonderful this is. And now it's going to be repeated, and not only repeated in that same lane, but now we're creating 3 and 5 and 7 other lanes that it's happening over there too. And so that's what I see in King, and that's what I see in Bristol.
Yeah. Well, it's not unrelated to my experience in freshman comp, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And that there is an enthusiasm that I have not at King that I've not heard in a long time. Nell Beaker is on the board, and she's the one that introduced us.
Yes.
She looked at me and she said, "King is not just going to survive."
That's right.
And she made her fist,
Pumped her
and
fist.
she looked you right in the eye and says, "We are going to thrive."
That's absolutely
because of this new president that we have.
Oh, well, I'm humbled by that statement.
There are people are excited and they believe in you, and I'm
Thank you.
so glad that you chose Bristol and chose King. So.
Yeah. Well, we are so excited. I mean, we really are. It's I've said this over and over again, and it's the absolute truth. I feel a privilege to come here. So I came here not only because I see the opportunity, but because it did align. I mean, I find it a privilege to be able to come here and do what I do. It's a little bit like, you know, when we talk about if, you know, like I'm a point guard on a team and somebody's like, well, we really need a point guard. Could you come? I mean, this has happened a couple of times. I'm a drummer, and where I've been at church and sometimes, and they're like, it just came up in conversation. We really need a drummer. And I was like, oh, well, I play the drums. They're like, really? Would you come and play? You know? And then it's like, yes, you're asking me to come and do something I love to do. And so that is what's wonderful, is to be able to come to King and do what I love to do, which is both celebrating people. I mean, I'm so excited of just so many people that I continue to meet that are just wonderful people here.
Yeah, I can see it in you, and it is infectious, and I am hopeful for the future of King in a way that I have not been in recent years. So
thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for being on today.
Yes, absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Find a way.